In the cool, fading light of an autumn afternoon, the university campus sprawled out like a living map of history and ambition. The ancient stone buildings, interspersed with modern glass structures, bore silent witness to generations of learning, debate, and, unbeknownst to most, secret lives. On that day, as amber leaves drifted across the quad, and students bustled between classes, a shock rippled through this venerable institution, a crime that would shatter the carefully maintained facade of academic life and reveal hidden layers of betrayal and corruption. It all began in the main auditorium, a vast hall with vaulted ceilings and worn red seats that had once echoed with passionate speeches and inspiring lectures. The auditorium's stage, set for the evening's guest lecture on the evolution of technology, was empty save for a single microphone and a scattering of old program booklets. In the hours leading up to the event, the building had hummed with preparation, faculty and staff fine-tuning the sound system, students rehearsing lines for an upcoming performance, and custodial crews ensuring that every corner shone. But as dusk gave way to twilight, and the campus settled into a quieter rhythm, a grim discovery would upend the ordinary and thrust the university into a maelstrom of investigation. Late that evening, while most corridors lay quiet and the library's lamps burned steadily in solitude, Campus Security Officer Nolan Price made his routine rounds near the auditorium's rear exit. His flashlight's narrow beam swept across the corridor, catching fleeting glimpses of old posters and the faded names of past speakers. It was then that Nolan noticed something out of place, a dark figure lying at the foot of a flight of stone steps leading to a side door. His heart raced as he approached, the beam revealing a body sprawled in an unnatural heap on the cold, hard floor. The victim, later identified as Marcus Ellison, a mid-level administrative coordinator, known for his unassuming demeanor and meticulous attention to detail, lay motionless. His once pristine suit was rumpled and stained with dark smudges of blood, and his eyes, wide in final shock, stared blankly at the ornate ceiling above. In his hand was clutched a torn scrap of paper, its edges crinkled and ink smeared in a careless scrawl. No elaborate message graced the note, merely an unadorned cryptic string of characters that would later confound investigators. Nolan's trembling voice broke the silence as he alerted campus security and dialed 911. Within minutes, the echo of sirens and the steady footsteps of uniformed officers filled the once tranquil corridor. Forensic specialists in protective suits arrived and began their work with clinical precision, documenting every detail: the precise angle at which Marcus's body had collapsed against the stone, the pattern of footprints in the scattered dust, and the seemingly insignificant scrap of paper that now hinted at a deeper mystery. It was immediately apparent that this was no accident. The body was arranged in a manner that suggested forethought. Every piece of evidence was positioned too deliberately to be random. Detective Serena Kim, renowned for her innovative techniques and tenacious pursuit of truth, was assigned to the case. Arriving on campus as the last hues of twilight faded into a cool, starlit night, Serena took a moment to absorb the gravity of the scene. She moved slowly through the corridor, her sharp gaze picking out minute details: the glint of a fallen pen, the faint drip of blood from the victim's temple onto the aged stone, the delicate imprint of a shoe in a dusty patch near a window. Instead of rushing into interviews, she allowed the setting to speak to her, each detail forming a silent narrative that she meticulously recorded in her well-worn notebook. Rather than following a straightforward chronology, Detective Kim opted for an approach that resembled piecing together a vast, intricate puzzle. Her first step was to gather accounts from those present on campus that evening. In a quiet, dimly lit corner of the campus cafe, she interviewed Lydia Carter, a graduate student known for her analytical mind and perceptive observations. Marcus was always so reliable, always double-checking every detail, Lydia said, her voice low with disbelief. That night I noticed he seemed preoccupied, almost as if he was chasing down a mistake in our records. He mentioned something about discrepancies in the room booking logs, but I didn't think much of it until now. Lydia's recollection, though brief, hinted at an internal concern that might have been more than just professional anxiety. Next, Serena met with Theo Martin, a maintenance worker with decades of service on campus. Theo recalled that Marcus had approached him earlier that day, his expression grave. He told me that something in the digital archives didn't match the physical copies of the schedules, Theo said, frowning as he recalled the conversation. I thought it was just a computer error, but knowing Marcus, he wouldn't have mentioned it unless he was really troubled. I remember him saying, "There's a pattern here. If these numbers are off, it means someone is taking what doesn't belong to them." I never imagined it would come to this. Theo's words added a layer of urgency, suggesting that Marcus had been onto something far more significant than routine discrepancies. Determined to understand the depth of Marcus's investigation, Detective Kim obtained a search warrant for his modest apartment, a cramped unit in a worn building near the heart of campus. The apartment was sparse and unadorned, a single room with minimal furniture, a threadbare rug on the hardwood floor, and a small window that overlooked the bustling street below. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and stale coffee. In a locked drawer of a battered desk, Serena discovered Marcus's personal journal, a leather-bound notebook with a cover cracked by time and pages filled with neat, careful handwriting. Early entries detailed his routine work, shift logs, maintenance schedules, and brief notes on the state of the campus facilities. However, as the entries progressed, a more ominous tone emerged. In one entry written just 3 days before his death, Marcus noted, "I have discovered small discrepancies between the digital records and the physical ledgers. Each instance seems trivial, a missing digit here, a date off by one, but the pattern is deliberate. I fear that someone with access to our systems is systematically diverting funds or supplies, and if I continue, I may expose a truth that will cost me dearly." The final lines were abruptly cut off, as if his pen had been snatched away mid-sentence, leaving a haunting void that resonated with impending danger. Parallel to the physical evidence, the cyber unit managed to recover fragments of deleted text messages from Marcus's old cell phone, a device with a shattered screen and worn keys that had clearly endured long, stressful nights. The recovered messages were blunt and unadorned, issuing simple directives such as "cease your inquiry" and "do not pursue further." The stark, unembellished tone of these texts suggested that someone had taken deliberate steps to halt Marcus's investigation, steps that had ultimately proved fatal. Instead of pursuing a linear timeline, Detective Kim's investigation branched out into several parallel tracks. One key avenue was the administrative records of the university's facilities management, which maintained both digital logs and original handwritten ledgers for every transaction. With permission from the facilities director, Serena and a veteran clerk named Roland began comparing the two sets of records. The differences were minute, a few numbers here, a slight alteration there, but when analyzed over a period of months, a disturbing pattern emerged. The digital logs consistently showed that every maintenance order was fulfilled in full, while the handwritten ledgers revealed recurring shortfalls, small deficits that, when accumulated, amounted to a significant diversion of resources. Forensic accountants were brought in to trace the financial implications, and their meticulous analysis revealed that these discrepancies had funneled a substantial sum into an offshore account associated with a shell corporation that appeared only as a generic entity in public filings. The financial trail was laid bare by detailed charts and graphs that tracked the minor adjustments over time, a diversion so subtle that it could easily have been dismissed as a series of clerical errors, yet its cumulative effect was undeniable. The data indicated that a network of mid-level administrators within the university's facilities management had exploited vulnerabilities in the digital record-keeping system to siphon off funds intended for essential repairs and upgrades. The diverted money, though small in each individual instance, had over time created a significant gap in the university's operating budget, a gap that could only be explained by deliberate fraud. As the investigation advanced, anonymous tips began arriving. One plain envelope, delivered to Detective Kim's temporary office in the facilities department, contained a typed note that read, "Every record tells a story if you know where to look." Another tip, sent via a secure email, warned her simply, "Stop now." Though the messages were sparse, their tone was unmistakably menacing, a clear indication that someone with a vested interest in keeping the discrepancies hidden was watching her every move. Federal agents, drawn by the case's potential to expose a wide-ranging conspiracy, soon joined the investigation. Their advanced digital forensics tools reconstructed a nearly complete timeline of the deleted messages from Marcus's phone, revealing a steady escalation in the warnings as his investigation deepened. Simultaneously, forensic accountants produced detailed financial models that mapped out the incremental misappropriation of funds, demonstrating conclusively that the discrepancies were part of a systematic cover-up. The combined evidence painted a damning portrait. Over several years, a network of university employees had manipulated the records to divert funds into a hidden account, and when Marcus began to document these irregularities, the perpetrators silenced him with cold precision. Detective Kim compiled her findings into a comprehensive report, a voluminous dossier that spanned hundreds of pages, interweaving physical evidence, digital reconstructions, detailed financial analyses, and witness testimonies. The report presented a clear narrative. Marcus had uncovered a deliberate scheme to divert resources from the university's facilities budget, a scheme executed by mid-level administrators colluding with external contractors. His journal, his digital messages, and the cumulative discrepancies in the records all pointed to a network of corruption that had been allowed to flourish in the shadows of bureaucratic routine. The dossier was submitted to the district attorney in a series of confidential briefings, its contents a searing indictment of a system that had betrayed the trust of its stakeholders. Deeply disturbed by the implications of the evidence, the district attorney convened a grand jury in the county courthouse, a stark, unadorned building that had long served as a crucible for justice. Over a series of intense sessions that stretched late into storm-tossed nights, expert witnesses testified about the advanced digital forensic methods used to recover the deleted messages, the statistical techniques that confirmed the improbability of random errors, and the rigorous financial analyses that traced the diverted funds to an offshore account. Their combined testimony left little room for doubt. The discrepancies were not accidental, but were the result of a deliberate, systematic operation. After lengthy deliberations, the grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly connected the manipulation of the university's records to the murder of Marcus Ellison. The trial that followed was a protracted, emotionally charged process, unfolding over several weeks in a packed courtroom, filled with students, faculty, community members, and a swarm of journalists. Federal prosecutors presented their case with unwavering clarity, interweaving digital reconstructions of the deleted text messages with detailed financial models that charted the gradual diversion of funds. A digital forensics expert took the stand, meticulously explaining how the recovered messages, each a curt, unadorned command to stop investigating, formed a continuous timeline of escalating threats. Forensic accountants unveiled intricate graphs that demonstrated how the seemingly trivial discrepancies, when aggregated over time, amounted to a significant financial diversion, evidence that could only be the result of deliberate, calculated fraud. Witness after witness, including former facilities clerks and longtime maintenance workers, testified in measured tones about the gradual erosion of record accuracy, a process that allowed corruption to seep into every corner of the administrative system. When Detective Kim took the stand, her testimony was a blend of technical precision and deep personal loss. She recounted the moment she discovered the body in the quiet corridor of the university's administrative building, her voice steady even as she described the stark contrast between the organized chaos of a working institution and the silent tragedy that had unfolded before her eyes. She described how every minute detail, from the wet imprint of a shoe on the polished floor to the exact words in Marcus's journal, had been carefully documented and painstakingly linked to a broader pattern of deliberate manipulation. Her narrative was unhurried and deliberate, each sentence a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth that had cost a dedicated man his life. The courtroom listened in heavy silence as she explained how every unaccounted number and every terse warning had converged to expose a vast network of corruption. In the end, the grand jury's indictments led to the conviction of several mid-level administrators and technical operatives directly involved in the manipulation of the university's records. They received lengthy prison sentences, and their names were entered in the public record as stark reminders of the consequences of violating public trust. Yet, many in the community were left with a lingering sense of incompleteness. The highest-ranking conspirators, the masterminds who had orchestrated the diversion, managed to avoid full exposure by exploiting intricate legal defenses. Their identities remained largely hidden behind redacted documents, a persistent enigma that underscored the profound difficulty of completely unmasking deeply embedded corruption. In the months that followed, the university's management was forced to reckon with a dramatic shift in accountability. Under the relentless pressure of public scrutiny and the exacting standards of independent auditors, the digital record-keeping systems were entirely overhauled. New protocols were introduced that mandated real-time logging of every maintenance transaction, robust encryption of all digital records, and periodic, publicly accessible audits. These measures, implemented gradually but with unwavering resolve, signified a renewed commitment to transparency, a promise that no secret, however minor, would ever again undermine the institution's integrity. Local media outlets, driven by a fervor for truth and accountability, produced a series of investigative reports and documentary features that chronicled every facet of the case, from the grim discovery on a quiet evening to the painstaking digital reconstructions that revealed a covert network of deceit. Community forums and town hall meetings were convened in civic centers, where citizens engaged in impassioned debates about the ethics of digital record keeping and the importance of protecting institutional integrity. The story of Marcus Ellison, a dedicated supervisor whose quiet determination to expose discrepancies cost him his life, became a symbol of the community's enduring fight against corruption, a reminder that every hidden detail matters. For Detective Serena Kim, the case became a defining moment in her career, a constant reminder that the pursuit of truth, no matter how intricate or dangerous, is a duty that must be upheld. In the solitude of her modest office, illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp and the quiet hum of her computer, she often revisited the recovered pages of Marcus's journal and the digital fragments of deleted messages. Each carefully recorded detail reinforced her belief that even the smallest inconsistency can unveil a vast network of deception, and that persistent inquiry is the cornerstone of justice. Over the ensuing years, the legacy of the investigation reshaped not only the internal operations of the university, but also the broader ethos of the community. The reformed digital record-keeping systems, once vulnerable to subtle manipulation, now stood as exemplars of transparency, regularly audited by independent experts and accessible to any concerned citizen. Public discussions on ethical governance and the protection of historical records became a common feature in community centers and local council meetings, ensuring that the lessons learned from Marcus's tragic fate continued to inform and inspire. The case was studied in academic forums and cited in debates as a watershed moment, proof that the smallest detail, when pursued with unwavering determination, has the power to expose deep-rooted corruption. Though some aspects of the conspiracy remained unresolved, most notably the identities of the highest-ranking conspirators who still managed to cloak themselves in layers of legal ambiguity, the comprehensive reforms implemented in the aftermath of the trial provided a beacon of hope. New employees were rigorously trained in the ethics of digital record keeping, and independent oversight committees were established to continuously monitor every transaction. The story of Marcus Ellison, a man whose quiet courage cost him his life, became a rallying cry for those dedicated to the pursuit of truth, inspiring a new generation of investigators to leave no discrepancy unchallenged. As seasons passed, and the university campus buzzed with renewed vitality, students debating in sunlit quadrangles, faculty huddled in modern lecture halls, and community members gathering in renovated meeting spaces, the memory of that long-ago case endured. The digital archives, once susceptible to manipulation, were now fortified by state-of-the-art technology and rigorous oversight, ensuring that every record was a testament to the institution's commitment to honesty. Public forums, now brimming with active engagement, served as constant reminders that the fight for transparency is perpetual. The legacy of Marcus Ellison and the painstaking investigation into the subtle, insidious manipulation of records stood as a powerful testament to the belief that every hidden detail, no matter how minor, can, when pursued relentlessly, illuminate a vast network of deceit and inspire a future built on accountability. In the end, the case was not simply about a solitary murder or a series of financial discrepancies. It was an intricate exploration of modern corruption, a narrative woven from digital traces, handwritten journals, and the unyielding dedication of those who refused to allow secrets to go unchallenged. The meticulous efforts of Detective Serena Kim and her team transformed a quiet, unassuming tragedy into a catalyst for systemic reform, reminding the community that vigilance is the cornerstone of justice. As the campus continued its vibrant daily rhythm and every digital record was meticulously preserved and scrutinized, the enduring spirit of accountability served as a beacon, a commitment that no matter how carefully the truth is hidden, persistent inquiry will eventually reveal it, reshaping the narrative of the past and lighting the way for a more transparent future. At midnight, the restaurant was nearly empty, except for a few lingering souls and the hum of a refrigerator in the back. The establishment, known simply as restaurant, had long been a popular destination for both hurried business lunches and celebratory dinners. Its polished wood tables, artful lighting, and softly playing jazz set the stage for an atmosphere that was both intimate and refined. On this particular night, however, that familiar comfort would be violently upended. It began in the kitchen, where the clatter of pans and the hiss of sizzling oil formed the heartbeat of the evening. Chef Darius Monroe, a man known for his innovative dishes and an unyielding passion for perfection, had spent the day preparing for the night's service. His tall, lean figure moved with the precision of a seasoned conductor as he orchestrated a symphony of flavors in the bustling kitchen. Yet amid the steam and aroma of roasted garlic and herbs, a shadow loomed that no one could have anticipated. During the final rush of dinner service, when the restaurant was filled with the laughter of diners and the clinking of wine glasses, a piercing scream shattered the orchestrated chaos. At first, no one noticed over the din of busy conversation and the rush of orders. It wasn't until a plate clattered to the floor in the dining room that a hush seemed to fall, a collective, unspoken realization that something was terribly wrong. In the narrow corridor leading from the kitchen to the dining room, a lifeless body lay crumpled on the cool tile floor. It was Chef Darius Monroe. His once vibrant eyes stared blankly upward, frozen in an expression that mixed shock with a hint of regret. His uniform was stained and disheveled, and his hands, normally deft and expressive, were slack at his sides. Clutched in his right hand was a crumpled scrap of paper, its ink blurred and nearly illegible in the dim emergency lighting. No dramatic declaration or cryptic symbol graced the note, just a few words that seemed to suggest a final plea. No truth escapes. Within minutes, the restaurant was plunged into a flurry of controlled chaos. Uniformed officers swarmed the scene, their measured voices barely rising above the ambient clamor of the startled diners who had taken refuge in the main hall. Forensic experts in blue coveralls moved with determined efficiency, snapping photographs and collecting samples from every visible detail: the position of Darius's body, the pattern of blood on the tiled floor, and even the subtle impressions of a dropped utensil near his hand. Every element of the scene was catalogued as if it were a note in a dark symphony. Detective Liana Reyes was assigned to the case, a woman whose reputation for unraveling the smallest threads of evidence had already made her a rising star in the department. With a calm, deliberate stride, Liana arrived at the restaurant as the chaos of the moment began to settle. In the sterile light of the crime scene, she walked slowly through the narrow corridor between the kitchen and dining area, absorbing every detail. The soft drip of a leaky pipe, the muted glow of emergency bulbs, and the faint aroma of seared meat now mingled with something far more ominous. Kneeling beside the body, Liana carefully retrieved the scrap of paper from Darius's hand. The paper, torn at the edges and damp with residual moisture, bore words that were too plain, too final to be dismissed, a quiet testament to a hidden truth that had cost a brilliant chef his life. Rather than immediately diving into a linear timeline, Detective Reyes opted for a method that resembled assembling a puzzle. She collected fragments of testimony, digital footprints, and physical evidence in an effort to reconstruct the events that had led to Darius's death. Her first step was to speak with Celia, a sous chef who had worked closely with Darius. In a small break room, Celia's eyes glistened with a mixture of shock and sorrow as she recounted the day's events. Darius was always passionate about every dish, Celia murmured, wringing her hands. But in the past week, I noticed he was distracted. He kept checking his phone and seemed to be poring over something in the ledger. I asked him if everything was all right, and he just smiled tightly, as if he were trying to hide his worry. I never imagined that his concern would lead to this. Celia's words were laced with regret and hinted at a side of Darius that few had seen, a man driven by a need to uncover discrepancies in the restaurant's routine. Another witness, Brandon, a waiter who had been carrying orders to the dining room, recalled a conversation overheard near the service entrance. "I remember hearing Darius speaking in low, urgent tones with someone on the phone," Brandon said, his voice soft and uncertain. "He mentioned something about figures not adding up and small amounts missing from every delivery. I thought it was just stress from the rush, but now it seems like he was trying to solve a mystery that was bigger than any of us." His account suggested that Darius had been investigating something that went beyond the usual pressures of a busy kitchen. Compelled by these fragmented testimonies, Detective Reyes secured a search warrant for Darius's apartment, a cramped second-floor unit in a worn building not far from the restaurant. Inside, the space was modest, a small living area with a single bed pushed against one wall, a rickety desk cluttered with old receipts and faded photographs, and a narrow window that looked out onto a bustling urban street. The apartment bore the scent of coffee and worn paper, a quiet reflection of a man who had lived simply and dedicatedly. In a locked drawer of a battered desk, Liana discovered Darius's personal journal, a leather-bound notebook with a cover marred by time and frequent use. Its pages were filled with careful, precise handwriting that chronicled his daily life, starting with unassuming details, shift logs, maintenance routines, and simple observations about the restaurant's operations. However, as the entries progressed, the tone grew darker. Darius began to note discrepancies in the inventory logs for kitchen supplies, small items missing from each delivery, minor variances that, when added together, could signal a significant diversion of resources. One entry, written just 3 days before his death, read, "I've noticed that every shipment of ingredients and supplies seems to be slightly short. It's as if someone is skimming off the top, so little that it would go unnoticed individually. But cumulatively, it's a substantial loss. If I continue to follow these numbers, I fear I'll uncover a truth that might put me in danger." The final entry ended abruptly, the ink trailing off into an unfinished sentence that spoke volumes in its incompleteness. Meanwhile, the cyber unit managed to recover fragments of deleted text messages from Darius's cell phone, a battered device with a cracked screen and worn keys that had seen many long, stressful nights. The recovered messages were succinct, issuing stark commands. "Stop now. Don't investigate further." Their terse, impersonal tone left no room for doubt. Someone had been sending warnings to Darius, urging him to abandon his inquiries. The digital evidence, combined with the journal entries, painted a disturbing picture, a meticulous investigation that had clearly upset powerful interests. Detective Reyes then turned her attention to the restaurant's administrative records. With permission from the management, she accessed both the current digital logs and the original paper ledgers housed in a locked back office. Working with a veteran records clerk named Milton, whose decades of experience lent him a discerning eye, she compared the two sets of records. The differences were subtle at first, a slight numerical discrepancy here, a minor alteration of a date there, but as these minute variations were analyzed over several months, they revealed a consistent pattern. The digital logs consistently recorded that every delivery of supplies was complete, whereas the original paper ledgers showed recurring shortfalls, small deficits that, when added up over time, amounted to a significant diversion of funds. Forensic accountants were brought in to analyze the financial data, and their painstaking work revealed that the cumulative effect of these discrepancies had led to the misappropriation of a substantial sum. The diverted money was traced through a series of electronic transactions to an offshore account associated with a shell corporation operating under a generic name. The financial evidence was damning. The forensic accountant's charts and graphs illustrated how each minor discrepancy contributed to a larger pattern of fraud, a pattern that could only have been orchestrated by someone with intimate access to both the digital and physical records. This network of corruption, it appeared, involved mid-level administrators within the restaurant's management who had colluded with external suppliers to exploit vulnerabilities in the record-keeping system. Their scheme was so subtle that it had flown under the radar for months, until Darius's meticulous observations had begun to reveal the truth. As the investigation progressed, Detective Reyes received several anonymous tips. One plain envelope, delivered to her at the back office of the restaurant, contained a typed note reading, "Numbers never lie." Another tip, sent via a secure email address, warned her to cease your inquiry. Although these messages offered no further explanation, their cold, unadorned language reinforced the notion that those behind the fraud were desperate to keep their illicit operation hidden. Federal agents were eventually called in to lend their advanced digital forensics and financial analysis expertise to the case. Their state-of-the-art tools reconstructed a near-complete timeline of the deleted text messages from Darius's phone, revealing that the warnings had escalated in frequency in the final days before his murder. Simultaneously, forensic accountants created detailed models that demonstrated how the minor discrepancies, when aggregated over time, diverted a significant portion of the restaurant's operating budget. The combined evidence formed a damning mosaic, a meticulously orchestrated cover-up that had persisted for months and possibly years, until Darius's investigation had begun to expose it. Detective Reyes compiled all her findings into a comprehensive report, a voluminous dossier spanning hundreds of pages that interwove physical evidence, digital reconstructions, financial analyses, and witness testimonies into a coherent narrative. The report argued that the discrepancies in the restaurant's records were not innocent oversights, but were the result of deliberate manipulations designed to divert funds for personal enrichment. It contended that Darius Monroe's murder was a calculated act of silence, carried out by those who had benefited from the fraudulent scheme. The dossier was submitted to the district attorney in a series of confidential briefings, its contents an unequivocal indictment of a corrupt network that had preyed on the restaurant's resources. The district attorney, deeply disturbed by the implications for public trust and financial integrity, convened a grand jury at the county courthouse, a stark functional building that had seen many such cases unfold. In a series of marathon sessions that stretched late into storm-riddled nights, expert witnesses testified about the digital forensic techniques used to recover the deleted messages, the statistical methods that confirmed the improbability of the discrepancies being accidental, and the detailed financial tracing that linked the diverted funds to the offshore account. Their combined testimony was precise and relentless, leaving no room for alternative interpretations. After exhaustive deliberation, the grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly connected the systematic manipulation of the records to the murder of Darius Monroe. The trial that ensued was a protracted legal battle, unfolding over several weeks in a crowded courtroom filled with local residents, legal experts, and an eager media. Federal prosecutors presented their case with unwavering clarity, interweaving digital reconstructions of the deleted messages with detailed financial charts that charted the incremental diversion of funds. A digital forensics expert took the stand to explain how the recovered texts, each a terse, impersonal command to stop investigating, had been meticulously pieced together, forming a timeline that culminated in the fatal days leading up to Darius's death. Forensic accountants presented intricate graphs that illustrated how seemingly insignificant discrepancies, when aggregated over time, amounted to a substantial misappropriation of funds. Witnesses, including longtime employees and former suppliers, testified in measured tones about the gradual erosion of record accuracy, a slow, insidious process that had allowed corruption to flourish under the guise of routine operations. When Detective Reyes took the stand, her testimony was a masterful blend of technical precision and raw personal sorrow. She recounted the chilling moment she discovered the body in that dim corridor of the restaurant, a moment marked by the echo of her footsteps on the cold tile and the haunting image of Darius's lifeless form. With a steady voice, she described how every detail, from the exact placement of the scrap of paper in his grasp to the subtle discrepancies in the digital logs, had been meticulously documented and painstakingly linked to a broader pattern of systematic fraud. Her narrative, delivered with calm resolve and a palpable sense of loss, left the courtroom in a heavy silence as each piece of evidence coalesced into a damning portrait of corruption. Ultimately, the grand jury's indictments resulted in the conviction of several mid-level administrators and technical operatives directly implicated in the manipulation of the restaurant's records. They were handed lengthy prison sentences, and their names were entered into the public record as stark warnings of the perils of abusing administrative power. Yet for many in the community, the verdict felt incomplete. The highest-ranking conspirators, the architects who had orchestrated the entire diversion, managed to elude full exposure by exploiting complex legal defenses. Their identities remained largely obscured in the final documents, leaving a lingering mystery that underscored the difficulty of completely unmasking deeply embedded corruption. In the aftermath of the trial, the management of the restaurant was compelled to enact sweeping reforms. Under intense public pressure, and with independent auditors scrutinizing every transaction, the restaurant overhauled its digital record-keeping systems. New protocols mandated real-time logging of every supply order and maintenance activity, robust encryption of data, and periodic, publicly accessible audits. These measures, implemented gradually, yet resolutely, restored a measure of public confidence and signaled a renewed commitment to transparency, an effort to ensure that no secret would ever again tarnish the integrity of the institution. Local media, driven by a steadfast commitment to accountability, produced a series of investigative documentaries that retraced every phase of the case, from the quiet, haunting discovery in the corridor to the painstaking digital reconstructions that revealed a covert network of fraud. Community forums and town hall meetings sprang up in civic centers, where residents, experts, and elected officials debated the ethical implications of digital record keeping and the necessity of persistent oversight. The story of Darius Monroe, a modest technician whose quest for truth cost him his life, evolved into a rallying call for those determined to challenge corruption and preserve public trust. For Detective Liana Reyes, the case remained an enduring testament to the power of vigilance. In the quiet solitude of her modest office, walls lined with case files and the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating the digital logs, she often revisited the recovered pages of Darius's journal and the stern messages extracted from his phone. Each minute detail reinforced her belief that even the smallest inconsistency could serve as a doorway to a vast network of deception, and that every hidden discrepancy, when pursued with relentless determination, would ultimately be revealed. Over the ensuing years, the legacy of the investigation reshaped not only the restaurant's internal systems but also the community's broader approach to accountability. The digital records, once susceptible to subtle manipulation, became exemplars of transparency, rigorously monitored by independent auditors and accessible to any concerned citizen. Public discussions regarding the ethics of digital record keeping and the protection of historical data became common at neighborhood meetings and city council sessions. The story of Darius Monroe served as an enduring reminder that every unaccounted detail has the power to expose corruption and that the diligent pursuit of truth is the foundation of a just society. In time, the case became more than a recounting of a single tragic event. It evolved into a potent narrative of modern corruption and the transformative power of accountability. The meticulous reforms implemented in the wake of the investigation ensured that future records would be safeguarded against similar manipulation, and new generations of employees were trained in the principles of ethical data management. Community leaders and civic activists embraced the legacy of Darius's sacrifice as a call to remain ever vigilant, ensuring that even the smallest anomaly would be scrutinized and that every hidden secret would eventually come to light. Though some aspects of the conspiracy remained unresolved, particularly the true identities of the highest-ranking conspirators who had managed to shield themselves behind legal technicalities, the collective efforts of those who had fought to expose the truth ensured that the impact of the case would endure. The restaurant's new systems, with their rigorous real-time data logging and transparent public records, stood as a testament to the community's resolve to safeguard its institutions from corruption. And as diners continued to enjoy their meals under the soft glow of tasteful lighting, the memory of that long-ago investigation persisted, a constant, albeit silent, reminder that in every detail, no matter how minute, lies the potential for revelation, and that the tireless pursuit of truth is an enduring beacon in a world that too often prefers secrecy over accountability. The art gallery stood on a busy downtown street, its sleek glass facade reflecting the fading light of an early autumn evening. Inside, the space was a carefully curated haven of modern masterpieces and classical relics, where soft classical music mingled with hushed conversation. Visitors wandered among minimalist sculptures and vibrant canvases, drawn by the promise of beauty and inspiration. Yet beneath the refined surface of polished marble floors and immaculate white walls, a secret was unfolding, a secret that would soon shatter the gallery's tranquil facade and expose a network of betrayal and hidden ambition. Quentin Reyes, one of the gallery's respected curators, had spent the day meticulously preparing for a new exhibition. Known for his keen eye and a refined taste that had earned him accolades in the local art scene, Quentin was deeply passionate about every piece in his collection. His reputation was built on a careful balance of creativity and integrity, and he was considered the guardian of the gallery's aesthetic soul. However, in recent weeks, murmurs had begun to surface among the staff, a sense that something was amiss in the records, that discrepancies in the acquisition files hinted at a darker undercurrent. Quentin had dismissed these concerns as overzealous speculation, yet privately, he had grown increasingly troubled. That fateful evening, as twilight deepened into a velvety dusk and the gallery's soft lighting began to illuminate every corner in gentle hues, Quentin stayed late to make final adjustments for the opening of the exhibition. He reviewed acquisition documents, double-checked provenance certificates, and ensured that every artifact was perfectly positioned for its debut. But as the clock neared midnight, Quentin's focus shifted. He began noticing small irregularities in the inventory logs, a painting's documented dimensions that didn't match its actual size, a misdated sculpture, minor alterations in purchase prices. These details, initially dismissed as clerical errors, had begun to form a pattern too consistent to ignore. In the quiet solitude of the gallery's back office, a cramped room lined with filing cabinets and shelves of aged ledgers, Quentin's apprehension grew. He opened a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed by time and filled with careful annotations, and discovered discrepancies that sent a chill down his spine. For months the records had been systematically altered, small amounts were missing from purchase invoices, and some acquisition costs had been reduced without explanation. The puzzle that Quentin began to piece together hinted at an elaborate cover-up, a financial manipulation that might have enriched a secretive few at the gallery's expense. His hands trembled as he made copies of the altered pages, determined to uncover the truth before it was too late. A few hours later, in the middle of the night when the gallery was shrouded in silence, a piercing scream echoed from the exhibition hall. It was the kind of sound that cuts through the stillness, a sound that promises that something unspeakable has occurred. Staff rushed toward the source of the noise, and there, beneath the dramatic shadows cast by the carefully arranged spotlights, lay Quentin Reyes. His body was sprawled on the polished floor, his eyes wide with a final look of shock. His once elegant attire was crumpled and stained with dark, spreading blotches, and his hands, so accustomed to delicate touches, were frozen in a final gesture, as if reaching out for something he could no longer grasp. Clutched in his left hand was a small scrap of paper, its ink smudged by tears and the dampness of the air. The note bore no grand message, only an incomplete string of numbers and letters, as if Quentin had tried to leave behind evidence of what he had discovered before fate intervened. The discovery of Quentin's body sent shockwaves through the gallery. The once vibrant space fell into a heavy silence, punctuated only by the urgent shuffling of uniformed officers and the steady clicks of cameras as forensic experts meticulously documented every detail. Every footprint, every faint smear of blood on the marble floor, and every discarded piece of paper was recorded with clinical precision, a desperate attempt to capture the truth before it vanished into the night. Detective Evelyn Park was called in to lead the investigation. Known for her unconventional thinking and her meticulous approach to unraveling complex cases, Evelyn arrived at the scene with a quiet determination that belied the turmoil churning beneath. The gallery's elegant corridors, bathed in soft amber light, now seemed to pulse with an undercurrent of menace. Evelyn methodically examined the scene, the way Quentin's body was arranged, the delicate trail of evidence leading from the back office to the exhibition hall, and the cryptic note clutched in his hand. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle that would require patience and persistence to solve. Instead of immediately diving into a linear timeline, Evelyn chose to reconstruct the events through a series of interviews, physical evidence, and digital traces. Her first conversation was with Lucia Gomez, a senior gallery assistant who had worked closely with Quentin for years. Lucia's voice trembled as she recalled the events of that night. "Quentin was always the one who cared deeply about every detail," Lucia said softly. "In the days before the opening, he seemed preoccupied, almost as if he were piecing together a secret. He talked about discrepancies in our records, a few pages that didn't add up. I thought he was simply being thorough, but now I'm not so sure." Lucia's recollections hinted at a hidden side of Quentin, a side driven by a determination to expose corruption that had ultimately cost him his life. Evelyn then interviewed Malik Rivera, a maintenance worker responsible for the day-to-day upkeep of the gallery. Malik remembered that earlier on the evening of the murder, he had seen Quentin reviewing a stack of papers in the back office, his face drawn with worry. "I could tell something was bothering him," Malik said, his tone heavy with regret. "He mentioned something about missing funds in our records, but I didn't press him. I assumed he was just stressed about the exhibition." In hindsight, it's clear that he was on to something serious. Malik's testimony added a layer of urgency to the investigation, suggesting that Quentin's suspicions had not been idle. The next phase of Evelyn's investigation took her deeper into the labyrinth of administrative records maintained by the gallery. With permission from the board, she accessed both the digital logs and the original paper ledgers stored in a secure, rarely used room in the basement. Working with a veteran records clerk named Henry, whose experienced eyes had scanned countless documents over the years, Evelyn painstakingly compared the two sets of records. The differences were subtle, a misprinted figure here, a slightly altered date there, but when these discrepancies were tallied over several months, they formed an unmistakable pattern. The digital records consistently indicated that every transaction was complete, while the paper ledgers revealed recurring shortfalls in the amounts received. These discrepancies, when aggregated, amounted to a significant diversion of funds, a scheme that seemed too systematic to be mere coincidence. Forensic accountants were brought in to analyze the financial data, and their findings were damning. The accountants revealed that the cumulative effect of the minor discrepancies had resulted in a diversion of thousands of dollars over the course of a year, a sum that, while insignificant on any single day, was substantial when viewed in aggregate. The diverted funds had been funneled through a complex series of electronic transactions and ultimately disappeared into an offshore account tied to a shell corporation. The financial trail was clear, and it confirmed what the physical evidence had long suggested. Quentin's discovery of these discrepancies had exposed a deliberate, systematic fraud perpetrated by a network of mid-level administrators within the gallery, likely in collusion with external suppliers. As Evelyn delved deeper, anonymous tips began to surface. A plain envelope was found tucked into a filing cabinet in the back office, its contents typed in a simple, unadorned font. "Let the numbers speak." Another tip arrived via a secure email account, cautioning, "Investigate quietly, or you will be silenced." Although these messages were spare and offered little context, their tone was unmistakably urgent, a clear indication that those behind the cover-up were aware of the investigation and were willing to act to protect their interests. Federal agents were eventually called in to lend their expertise, and their advanced digital forensic tools enabled them to reconstruct a nearly complete timeline of the deleted text messages from Quentin's phone. Their analysis revealed that the warnings had escalated in frequency during the final days of his investigation, painting a clear picture of mounting pressure. Simultaneously, the forensic accountants' detailed graphs and financial models mapped out the incremental losses resulting from the discrepancies, a diversion that could only be the result of systematic fraud. The combined evidence formed a damning mosaic that left no doubt Quentin's murder was the tragic culmination of a covert operation designed to siphon off funds and obscure the truth behind altered records. Detective Evelyn Park compiled all her findings into a comprehensive report, a voluminous dossier of over 400 pages that intertwined photographs of the crime scene, digital reconstructions of deleted messages, detailed financial analysis, and testimonies from witnesses and former employees. The report presented a clear narrative over several years. A network of mid-level administrators within the gallery's management had manipulated both digital and paper records to hide small systematic discrepancies in the inventory and financial logs. This gradual, deliberate diversion of funds had not only weakened the gallery's budget for essential maintenance and security, but had also exposed a web of corruption that reached deeper into the institution than anyone had realized. When Quentin's keen investigation began to reveal the pattern, those responsible had acted with ruthless efficiency to silence him, resulting in his untimely death. The district attorney, deeply disturbed by the implications for public trust and institutional integrity, convened a grand jury in the county courthouse, a stark, modern building with reflective glass and an air of uncompromising justice. Over several grueling sessions that extended late into stormy nights, expert witnesses testified about the advanced digital forensic techniques used to recover the deleted messages, the statistical analyses that confirmed the improbability of random discrepancies, and the forensic accounting that traced the misappropriated funds to an offshore account associated with a shell corporation. Their combined testimonies were delivered with technical rigor and unflinching clarity. After lengthy deliberations, the grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, directly linking the systematic manipulation of records to the murder of Quentin Reyes. The trial that followed was a lengthy, emotionally charged process. In a crowded courtroom filled with faculty, students, community members, and a throng of journalists, federal prosecutors presented their case with meticulous precision. Large monitors displayed digital reconstructions of the deleted text messages, each screen revealing a continuous chain of warnings that had escalated over time. Forensic accountants took the stand to present intricate graphs that demonstrated how minor discrepancies, when accumulated over months, had resulted in a significant diversion of funds from the gallery's operating budget. Witness after witness, including longtime employees like Lucia Gomez and records clerks like Henry, testified in calm, measured tones about the subtle changes that had gradually eroded the integrity of the gallery's records. When Detective Park took the stand, her testimony was a blend of technical detail and raw personal loss. She described in measured, deliberate language the moment she discovered Quentin's body in the quiet, shadowed back office of the gallery. She recounted every detail: the damp, cold concrete beneath his body, the faint imprint of his footsteps leading from the archives to the main hall, and the small scrap of paper that held the final cryptic message. Her voice remained steady as she explained how every piece of evidence, from the altered digital logs to the handwritten discrepancies in the ledgers, formed an interconnected web that pointed unequivocally to deliberate fraud. The courtroom was silent as she concluded her testimony, each listener absorbing the gravity of a case that had exposed the deep-seated corruption within one of the city's most esteemed cultural institutions. Ultimately, the grand jury's indictments led to the conviction of several mid-level administrators and technical staff directly implicated in the fraudulent scheme. They were sentenced to long-term prison terms, and their names were recorded in public documents as stark reminders of the consequences of exploiting public trust. Yet, despite this legal victory, many in the community felt that the resolution was incomplete. The highest-ranking conspirators, the architects behind the entire operation, managed to elude full exposure by employing complex legal defenses and cloaking themselves behind layers of institutional protection. Their identities remained largely redacted in the final verdicts, a bitter reminder that even when substantial corruption is unveiled, some shadows may persist. In the wake of the trial, the gallery's board was forced to confront the scandal head-on, under immense public pressure and with independent auditors monitoring every transaction. The gallery overhauled its digital record-keeping systems. New protocols mandated real-time data logging, robust encryption, and periodic public audits. These sweeping reforms, while unable to erase the past, restored a measure of trust in an institution that had long been revered as a sanctuary for art and culture. Local media outlets, invigorated by the case's revelations, produced an array of investigative reports and documentary segments that meticulously chronicled every twist and turn, from the haunting discovery of Quentin Reyes's body to the painstaking digital reconstructions that had revealed a covert network of corruption. Public forums and town hall meetings became regular events, where community members, scholars, and industry experts debated the ethical implications of digital record keeping and the importance of preserving institutional integrity. The story of Quentin Reyes, a man whose quiet dedication to uncovering the truth cost him his life, became a rallying cry for transparency, a reminder that every hidden discrepancy, no matter how small, can eventually bring to light a vast network of deceit. For Detective Park, the case remained an enduring lesson in vigilance in the quiet hours of the night, when the gallery was shuttered and the only sound was the soft hum of air conditioning in the empty corridors. She would often sit in her modest office and review the recovered pages of Quentin's journal, alongside the reconstructed text messages from his phone. Each piece of evidence, painstakingly documented and analyzed, reaffirmed her belief that the smallest anomaly can serve as a gateway to uncovering deep-rooted corruption. Over time, the legacy of the investigation reshaped not only the gallery's internal systems, but also the broader community's approach to accountability. The new digital record-keeping measures, subject to independent scrutiny and regular public review, became a model for other cultural institutions. Community leaders organized educational workshops on ethical data management and transparency, ensuring that the lessons of the case would be passed on to future generations. The story of Quentin Reyes evolved from a tragic loss into a powerful symbol of the ongoing battle against corruption, a reminder that the unyielding pursuit of truth is the cornerstone of a just society. In the end, the case of the art gallery was not merely a recounting of a single crime or a series of financial discrepancies. It was a complex, multifaceted exploration of modern corruption, a narrative woven from digital evidence, painstaking financial analysis, and the human cost of daring to expose hidden secrets. For Detective Park and her colleagues, every detail, from the slight variations in a ledger to the terse warnings in a deleted message, was a testament to the power of persistence. And as the gallery's lights once again illuminated its hallowed halls, the legacy of that investigation endured as a beacon of accountability, urging all who valued truth to remain ever vigilant, knowing that even the smallest inconsistency can reveal a story that changes everything.